Welcome to SteamLUG Cast, Season 4, Episode 4. We are recording this live on February the 19th of 2016. With me I have Bean.
Hello.
Our one and only hero.
Greetings.
John Drinkwater.
Hello.
And Telly.
Hi.
So, how has everybody been? What has everybody been playing? How about you, Bean?
Let's see. Played some Dirt Showdown during the last event and a little bit after that. Guns of Icarus, we have our semi-weekly practice sessions, been involved in those, and a little bit of extra time outside of that. I really like the game. And then pretty much this entire last week I've been consumed with Doom. I'll admit now I never actually played through Doom 2 years ago. I did play through Doom 3 when it originally came out, but never played the expansion, so this last week I've just been digging into that and been really consumed by the original Doom and Doom 2. Something about the movement and the fact that you can walk into a room full of enemies, still go, just kind of zigzag your way through them. It's just, I don't know. I'm trying to think of modern shooters that had that same kind of feel, and I can't think of any.
How did you play all of these? Was it via the RB Doom 3 BFG on Linux, or were you being a heathen?
Mostly being a heathen, but I started, actually, a couple days ago, I started playing Doom and Doom 2 again in RB Doom. I didn't realize it would play the originals as well.
What made you replay them?
I'm not really certain.
It was in your library.
Yeah, it was just sitting there staring at me one day, and I picked it up, and I'm like, you know what? It doesn't take that long to play through it. Why not? Let's give it a shot. And then once I got into Doom 2, I kind of expected it was going to be like anytime I go back and play something that I haven't played in years. I'll play it for an hour or two, and then go, yeah, that's cool. I remember why I like the game, and it's good enough. But for some reason, once I got to Doom 2, I just found myself completely hooked in it. I think it's that they took a lot of the movement mechanics and things of, since you couldn't look up and down, there was no mouse look. The way that some of the levels are stacked and expect you to run across large gaps, to get to platforms that are suspended above lava, for example. There's a lot of that kind of stuff in where Doom 2 utilized a lot of those in the level design to try and make you think your way through a level more so than just blasting through it. But I think it's the fast-paced action. It reminds me of some of the top-down shooters that I play, like Assault Android Cactus, Beat Hazard.
Oh, and Daedalus.
And Daedalus, yes. So, Dorito, what have you been up to?
Some XCOM 2, very little Dying Light. I have so much DLC to catch up on in that game that I didn't even get to the really new juicy bits that came out with the following DLC. And some more Insurgency, because that is just an easy drop-in, kill some dudes game that you can easily pick up and do. What about you, Hero?
I was playing some multiplayer, so you were being hunted. It was, I hadn't played it in a little while, and they've added some new enemies since the last time. So that was pretty fun. I think we may have an event for that next month, but we'll see. Also, some Grid Autosport. And Natural Selection 2, I've been getting a lot into that. I find that, when I started playing Natural Selection 2, I was much better as a Marine because it's more familiar. Now that I've been playing as an alien so much, because people don't like playing as it, I've gotten so much better, so I don't like being a Marine anymore.
What's your favorite alien?
Probably a Skulk. I don't know. I like jumping around and biting people's faces off.
Okay, we take the vanilla flavor out of this. What is your favorite evolved alien?
That's hard to say, because maybe the Fade, because I like being a ninja.
Yeah, the Fade has some nice strategies with the warp and all.
Right. It's so fun to mess with people with it.
But you need to be really careful to not run out of stamina in the middle of the action and then can't really fade out of there anymore.
And not stand in front of somebody with a shotgun.
No, that tends to hurt.
So how about you, John? What have you been playing?
Not as much as I'd like. I managed to play through a decent amount of American Truck Simulator pre-release. I played some Dying Light at the weekend at a friend's house, and that's actually really good fun, so I think I'll pick that one up. And I'm currently working on a QA project at the moment, so that's another game coming to Linux that I can't talk about, but yeah.
When you were playing Dying Light, do you know which parts you were playing? Were you playing the DLC or the base game?
It was right at the start. It was on my friend's PS4, so...
Okay.
I know, yeah.
So back when it was bright out, because the farther on you go, the less light there is, because it's dying.
So it's like Race the Sun with zombies?
I just finished the section crossing the crane at the start when you're learning some of the sort of parkour moves. No, it's quite good. I like the way that game has got the sort of the mantling behavior where you can sort of look up and it grapples. And yeah, good fun.
Oh yeah, I love the movement in that game.
Yeah, it definitely one-ups Mirror's Edge in terms of parkour, in my opinion.
Because it's open world at least.
Yeah, and the parkour actually always feels like it does what I want it to do. It's very predictable, not like where Mirror's Edge was a bit clunky at times, I would say.
Yeah, Mirror's Edge reminded me a lot of Dragon's Lair, where it was much more, make sure you do this movement at this time, or you're wrong.
So
Dying Light's a lot more free flow then?
Yeah, for one of the missions I was trying to do, you had to arm these electrical circuits. And I climbed up this building, dropped in from the wrong side, and, then the mission queue updated to say, you meant to be here anyway. And I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, literally any building you see, you can climb up majority of the outside of them or from any side. So yeah, it's decently flexible. The only thing I didn't like about it was I was finding it really hard to aim at their heads. And I know you get this little pointer, and obviously headshots are meant to do more damage. I just couldn't seem to get the aim right on it.
Maybe it'll be easier when you're using a mouse.
Not really. I mean, the point was over their head. Bashing them, it should have done something. And I also joined most of the SteamLUG guys playing Dirt Showdown as well. So, Telly, what have you been up to?
I have been continuing my adventures of bad driving in Grid Autosport. Attended the Dirt Showdown event with everybody else, and I am also horrible at Marines in Natural Selection 2.
I never said I was horrible.
Yeah, that is you admitting your faults, but that's okay.
I have a bunch of prior experience in the first Natural Selection game, where on the Marine sides, only the commander would give weapons to the troops. It's still stuck in my head that I shouldn't be buying weapons at all, ever.
That's okay, that means you can save for an exo.
So I always fall behind when we get to the mid-range or the end game.
Yeah, you two have been playing Natural Selection 2 recently, Italy and Hero, so my question is, there was an update that was set to really improve the hit detection and all, and I have really not played since that update. Would you say it has worked?
I cannot vouch one way or another for hit detection. I can just say that I get randomly kicked out of the game and told that my files don't match.
I can't say that I really noticed exactly, because I hadn't played before that patch in quite a while, but for the most part, my experience has been good, except for one case of a bad server. Just the server was lagging a lot. Seemed like a performance issue on their side.
Yeah, well, I read those notes, same thing, where it said there was some performance updates. So I thought, I'll give it a shot, because it didn't think it could run any more poorly for me than it already had. And actually, it did improve performance. Went from about 12 FPS to 16 FPS. So
good.
Yeah, I mean, it's still not
like
playable.
Almost 30% improvement.
I know, right? It's good to use me for test cases like that, then.
A little bit more and you'll have a cinematic experience.
I'll be lucky if I can hit 24.
So, moving on to our community happenings. We had events on February the 5th. That was right after the cast, I believe?
Yeah.
We had Counter-Strike Global Offensive, and I was there, and the turnout was quite good. Were you also there?
I was there. That was the first time I played played significantly since the all the changes they made. The new gun, the animations, and all that stuff. I didn't realize that they reverted some of the balance changes. That's kind of disappointing to me, because I agreed with the idea of them.
Yes, so did I.
You wanted that pistol to be overpowered.
No,
not the pistol.
Oh, you mean the other weapon?
The accuracy changes.
the assault rifles and pistol accuracy changes so that spraying wasn't as effective anymore.
Yeah, they reverted them. I was a little bit disappointed, but it was still fun.
Yeah, and it's so nice. This game really lets a lot of community members get into our games that normally aren't that active in either IRC or Mumble or elsewhere. It just reminds me of just how big our community is. The Penguin Army, it is mighty and large.
You know, and you mentioned that, it's like with Counter-Strike Global Offensive, there always seems to be a fairly decent turnout here. What surprises me is that, unlike Guns of Icarus, we can't get anybody to kind of say, okay, well, let's commit to playing once a week or something like that. You know, because we always spam people. With the Guns of Icarus, hi, we're practicing and we're playing again, we're up there, we're playing. And it just surprises me that with the community as large as we have, that we don't have other games that we're also having people organize and come together and play. It seems like Global Offensive is just perfect for that.
Yeah, but you don't really need us to play Global Offensive because everybody that already plays competitively has their 5-man stack, and if you just occasionally play, servers are constantly full, and in Guns of Icarus, it's a less popular game, and you need people to get together with. So we are actually filling a niche.
And I guess maybe that's what I was looking for more, is maybe we actually had like, a SteamLUG group that played together enough consistently to go, there's the slugs, go play them.
So, moving on the 6th we had Dirt Showdown, and I guess you people were there.
Yeah, I like Dirt Showdown. I like the demolition in it. I like just the, I think my favorite still is the 8-ball courses, because that's a little loop track where you're, almost, it's trying to set up for collisions in the intersections and things. That race mode to me is the most fun, because someone can be in first place and then get hit by the person in 6th place in the next lap, and there's a lot of chaos in it. I like that.
I don't remember it very well, but I can say I probably didn't want to be there.
I listened to the whole event happen because I was doing some work and I didn't think I had the game. And as soon as the event ended, I checked my library and noticed it's in my library. I'd never played it. So I downloaded it and then spent the next week or two just, whenever I'd pop onto Mumble, say, hey, anyone want to join me? And I've been playing it. Yeah, good fun, that game.
It's not realistic, though.
I went and created a libSDL2 controller binding for my wheel, and the control is an approximation of the turning of a wheel. It's like there's 7 notches each direction, which I can use to control which way I'm going.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious that game is not exactly meant for more serious input devices.
Just an arcade sort of driving game rather than a simulation, isn't it?
Right.
But at least you're not using your D-pad to steer anymore.
Yes, I'm not using my D-pad, which I had when I started out.
The D-pad on your wheel.
Or keyboard in a driving game. Got a couple people join us for Grid Autosport that were on a keyboard. Madness. I don't know how anyone can try a driving game with a keyboard. If it's not Trackmania.
When you have all the assists on, then you're only using the left and right to pick whether you pass people on the left and right. You don't even have to brake. You just keep on the throttle the whole time and say, I want to go to the left of this guy.
So on the 12th, we had Insurgency. We had enough people turn up that the server was full, and we had a couple of spares hanging around. Who actually started that event? Was that you, Hero?
No. I did join in later, I think.
I believe Nemoda was there earlier.
But that went on till the early hours. I continued playing after. Really good fun. I like that event. I wish more people would turn up.
Yeah,
so we could.
Well, it was full the entire time, for the most part.
Actually, it dropped out a little bit later on. That's when I got in, and then it got full again. So we had some. It was like going in waves, and but it stayed popular for quite a bit. So good fun with that event. Good turnout.
So then on the 13th, we had a Guns of Icarus online, an actual official event. Turnout was less than it normally was, which was kind of sad because the game had just gone on sale, and usually when that happens, the player population count goes up to the point where we're not waiting on matches. Still had a pretty good run. What was it, 4 or 5 matches in there? And I think the first 3 were just, again, it was on sale. Lots of new players. We had a few decisive victories.
I seem to recall taking some pleasure cruises so as to not completely destroy the new players.
Yeah, we never had the roof party, but next time we'll do that.
After the cast, we have a Nuclear Dawn event. Feel free to join us. It is for new commanders only, and I need new server usage data, so please fill up my server.
We really should say anyone can come to that event, not just new commanders, but be friendly to newbies.
Well, anybody can join it,
Yep.
but the commander role, as this is an RTS for 2 people, 1 on each side, and for everybody else it's a first-person shooter. So the commander should be someone who is less experienced at it, so as to keep it more balanced and welcoming to those that have not tried that before.
I've technically been a commander twice, so I might be ruled out there.
I think that counts still.
I am still newbish, yes.
I think the cutoff is if you know what you're doing and you clearly have been around for a long time, then you're not a new commander.
Well, I'll be cannon fodder then.
Tomorrow, February 20th, we will have a Space Hulk event. Next week, on the 26th, we will have a Dota 2 event, followed by Synergy on the 27th.
In other community news, DMDB Linux page gets confirmed working graph. It's like a graph that only goes up.
I went back through the history of the repository because we'd done a couple of refactors to the file that we used to store the information, and it basically meant that when we automated the blame feature to get the dates out, we had a hard edge of about 200 titles that we didn't know. It must have been more than 200 actually, about 350. Hadn't got any dates, so I just went back through the history and spent a few hours just digging that all up. And then on the unconfirmed side of it, we just have a breakdown of the different meanings of the terms beside each game to just explain it a bit more.
As well as clear numbers there that tell you how many remain in each category, right?
Yep.
So I still religiously check SteamDB, especially the unconfirmed and hinted stuff.
Yeah, same here.
And I just found a thing that I knew was working, and I clicked it. So I encourage everybody to look through that, look for unconfirmed titles, and see maybe you have that little obscure thing in your library nobody else has confirmed, and you click that "It works" button. So we actually reduce the number of unconfirmed titles, which are actually totally working.
Be lovely if you could. A follow-up to many months of going back and forth between Apple to actually get them to put our cast back on their store page. We finally had to sadly disable HTTPS for our MP3 feed, but it's meant we're relisted back on iTunes now. So even though people who'd already subscribed could continue downloading our episodes, you couldn't actually search for it on their site at all. So that's resolved now.
And we had to disable like the most basic security feature on the interwebs for that
because their backend rejected our cert because they've got an old version of Java. That's the story.
They probably can't be bothered to replace their back end because they don't care any longer. There's been no reason to ever revisit it. We are an edge case to them.
Maybe if they rewrite it in Swift, because that's what they want to do. Maybe.
That would break even more, sadly. Anyhow, let's move on. Here's our Steam and Valve news. There's a recent Steam beta client update that means the Steam controller is more friendly on the desktop. It enables the on-screen keyboard when you're not in big picture mode. It also allows you to use other controllers on the desktop as well as your Steam controller. It doesn't block any other ones working. So that's a really good change.
Some other exciting changes in this update were the ability to modify the Steam controller configuration without launching big picture mode, as well as something to look forward to, which is not implemented on Linux yet, which allows the Steam big picture mode overlay to be enabled in the desktop. Should be getting that soon, right?
I'm not sure on that.
Valve time.
A couple of sites spotted this, as well as SteamDB, that Valve have been putting some strings through their translation system that suggested that Bitcoin was being added as a payment method on Steam. This Tuesday, when they did the weekly web maintenance, an API call was introduced that allowed you to query your BitPay payment. I don't really know, it's not fleshed out fully, but yep, it seems that via BitPay you'll be able to use Bitcoins in the future. We'll update you if we hear anything more about that.
Bitcoin is suddenly getting interesting for me with actual stuff you can buy with it that I want to buy with it.
Moving on to tech news, the NVIDIA driver 361.28 has been released. This is an update to the beta, which includes fixes for the previously mentioned Civ 5 and KOTOR 2 problems, but introduced new issues. There are some games with the GLVND entry points require for you to set a variable in order for it to work.
And it's basically all the Source Engine games.
Anything that uses
Well,
threaded optimizations is going to be affected. That's even if you manually add it. And there are some other cases where it can happen.
right, and the source games in their launch scripts automatically
Right.
enable that environment variable.
So alternatively, you could just have libgl.so.1 go directly to the driver and skip the libglvnd. That also fixes it.
Right. And when you're installing the driver, you can choose to just use libgl and it won't even install glvnd. That's if you're doing it manually.
Yeah, but NVIDIA has heavily been encouraging and pushing distro maintainers, package maintainers to actually use the new libglvnd way, and that means if you get it from your distro, it's probably displaying that issue.
Right. They want to make sure that everybody's testing it, identify issues, and get them fixed as soon as possible.
Yeah, if the distros aren't using it now, they'll be using it in the next core version of the NVIDIA drivers.
Which, at some point, it will no longer be in beta and hopefully have patches to fix some of these issues.
Something that came out of the blue this past fortnight was Amazon have launched a game engine called Lumberyard, along with a suite of APIs and hosting packages, I guess you'd call it, with AWS. So they're encouraging developers to use their engine and get, was it discounted? Or I think with the engine you're required to use AWS. You can't use any other hosting, which is absurd, but That's their policy. But it currently supports PC, Xbox One, PS4. Mobile is coming soon, iOS and Android, and Linux and Mac appear to be at the tail end of that.
And by PC, you mean Windows.
Amazon means Windows.
Yes.
An interesting note here, this engine is basically a fork of CryEngine, because if you remember, Crytek and Amazon struck a deal recently, and this seems to be the fruit of that labor or that deal. And yeah, that means all the usability features, if you like them or not, of CryEngine seem to be in there.
They also have some work in here from the Hex engine, which comes from some developer that I forgot who it was that they obtained, and integration with Twitch services. It's also free as in beer. Anyone can download it and start using it, but they monetize mostly off of selling the server, the AWS services.
A rumor has emerged that the HTC Vive, which is Valve's partnered VR headset, is to be announced at the Mobile World Congress for pre-order, and apparently a price is coming as well. So we'll see what happens then.
Tears. That's what will happen in my eyes, because it's probably going to be more expensive than the Oculus Rift turned out to be, which already was too much.
Oh, no doubt. But what if it's just a little bit more, but it also includes Lighthouse and controllers?
That will already be a win, unless the gaming media decides to not pay attention to what actually is in the bundle and, oh, this number is higher than this one, ergo it is more expensive, even though you are getting more out of this. Which might totally happen because the gaming media is incompetent.
Quite a lot of them said they really like the experience that the Vive gives. So, we'll see. I wish them the best.
Right, from the little bit that I've seen, journalists have been saying that the Vive is technically better, which I would agree with, and I hope that that gets out. The message must be spread.
So, here comes the big one. An eruption. It's Vulkan! Vulkan!
Vulkan!
Wow.
The new low-level API by the Kronos Group has finally released. The 1.0 version is out. You can now start programming for it, downloading drivers and everything. SDKs are out. It's a whole deal, and people are already getting started. So, let's start with driver support, for example. NVIDIA on Kepler and Maxwell, pretty much meaning GTX 600 to 900 series, is fully supported via a special beta driver. It has a version number 355.00.26. If you have paid attention to our previous driver news, that's completely a different version than the current beta, and it's basically not included in any repo yet. You have to manually install it from NVIDIA's site if you want to test out Vulkan stuff. But it's already in SteamOS.
And as it is based on an older version of the driver, it has certain requirements for the X server as well as the kernel version. So some distributions will not be compatible with it unless if you downgrade certain packages, at least for the moment.
Or if you're on any distro that hasn't decided to run the very newest of certain packages, it will work out of the box.
Intel already has support for Broadwell and Skylake CPUs. Ivy Bridge and Haswell CPUs have some blocking issues that are under investigation. I am at least happy that this was not intentional limitation to only their newest CPUs, but... And when I mean CPU, I mean the included iGPU. But there are actual issues they are countering, and it will probably work on your older CPU as well.
Yeah, I actually compiled Mesa with Vulkan support to test this out on my Haswell just to see what would happen, and also because I didn't realize the versions. But anyway, as I was building it, because I made a few mistakes and had to rebuild it, and I was building from Git, each time that I built it, there were new commits to be pulled. They're definitely doing a lot of work on it very quickly, and that's exciting.
Here's AMD's entries to their story. They do have a driver, but only on Windows. There is no Vulkan driver yet for Linux, but it will be supported in the new upcoming AMD GPU driver, which means only really support on some of the latest of AMD's hardware, which is a bit sad and already is the first notch in the belt for me expecting AMD to be outgunned on the API they pretty much started by NVIDIA.
They've also said that while they were unable to release it on Linux, their in-house Linux driver with Vulkan is on par with the Windows version. So it's not yet compliant, but they're working on it.
Might suggest none of them work.
So for AMD users, this means that Catalyst needs to be released as a hybrid version that already uses AMD GPU, which almost certainly isn't going to happen until the next generation of AMD cards is released, somewhere in the order of 6 months away, before we can consider seeing a Vulkan driver for AMD on Linux.
So, there was another Steam beta update which introduced Vulkan support into Steam and into the Steam runtime with the vendor-independent Vulkan loader.
ICD, or whatever they call it.
Right, so the libvulkan is basically just a tool to choose which driver it should actually use. That way you can have multiple drivers from different vendors at the same time. You can use Intel and NVIDIA at the same time, for example.
And that came out of Lunar Jerry's Skunkworks.
Yep.
Good for them.
I wasn't sure that was supported in Vulkan 1. The sort of more than one device.
This is multiple vendors having their libraries on the same system.
Right, this is not for using the cards at the same time, it's just for having the drivers at the same time without conflicts.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's interject this here from the people that might have read the API. Is multi-GPU still not possible with Vulkan 1.0?
They haven't spec'd it out.
Could you manually hack it together at least?
I don't know enough to say that.
We do know that you can target multiple devices. The part that we don't know is if you can share content between the different GPUs yet.
So included in this update was preliminary support for the Vulkan version of the Steam overlay, but that is not yet working.
So the first game on Linux with Vulkan support is the Talos Principle. It is currently available in a public branch on Steam. It hasn't been the most involved port. It is, as they say, it's a direct clone of their GL backend. It is early days, but it's demonstrating that they are at least already getting mild performance gains. One of our listeners, Rake, he said that he just had a card hard lock running it, so it's obviously still a beta, so be cautious if you're going to run it. But otherwise, yeah, that's really good news.
Yeah, a bit more on that Vulkan implementation and the Talos Principle. It's basically implemented just wrapper. It's not even really fully built into their backend, the rendering backend. And some benchmarks have already shown across the board significant performance increases over their OpenGL implementation, while still sadly being lower than DirectX 11. And they said they are employing basically none of the new fancy volcanisms yet. They have just made this wrapper to work. This is not using really multi-threading yet. It's not using any special techniques that are possible with Vulkan. Already just making it possible for that game to run through Vulkan and just simply work, we get performance increasements. So this has me very enthusiastic about actually fleshed out implementations of the API.
So they do intend on updating their implementation to at least include some changes that should make it faster than even DirectX 11. For now, they are asking for help. If you are capable of running a driver that can use Vulkan and have the hardware, then go ahead and test it and tell them your experience, drop off the logs for them, and hopefully it may help their development. Dota 2, which is running on the Source 2 engine, is also known to have Vulkan support, but unfortunately does not include the required libraries to implement it right now. So you can use a specific parameter to try launching the game with Vulkan, but it'll just complain about the missing thing. We need to wait until Valve updates the game for that.
So, as was to be expected, many open source game engine and game writers and emulator writers are already keen on Vulkan support. Like, for example, libretro, the backend to RetroArt, which is, I believe, a full emulator suite for many different emulators. They already have a pull request for Vulkan support, sadly only on Wayland right now. Godot has already stated in the past that they will be supporting Vulkan. And somebody that also stumbles into our community sometimes, Raven with a silly number at the end of his nickname, he seems to be working on the implementation, as he is constantly telling me how it is killing his sanity to work on that, but it's already happening. And some other projects, this one has a silly name, PPSSPP, sounds like a PlayStation thing, John Drinkwater.
It's a PSP emulator, yeah. They've said it's going to support it in future versions for better performance. I think that's across the board the sentiment from an awful lot of these FOSS projects that they are really interested in looking at Vulkan. The lightweight Java game library is also looking at Vulkan as well, and they're all on their way to adding various support already for it. So yeah, good times.
Something we missing in here, but was, I believe, one of the first. It's GFWL, however it's called. Games for Windows Live, but the letters are in a somewhat different order.
GL for Windows, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, GLFW.
That already includes Vulkan support, I believe.
Yep, they got a patch on the day.
I'm really surprised by some of these really fast, even if early implementations.
Right. I'm actually kind of surprised at the timeline. I didn't expect to see anything official until like maybe October or something. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, the libretro pull request was the very same day that the spec was released. And it's very basic. It's not for the cores, so that's to say that the actual emulators don't use it yet. But that's really cool to see that they jumped on it so quickly, and it's already working.
Quite a few people had the spec early, of course. They've been working on this behind the scenes for the past few weeks.
Oh yeah, also nice statement about Vulkan. The API itself already includes support for X11 naturally, but also Wayland and Mir. And apparently even Ubuntu is going to support Vulkan in the next version in 1604, which is pretty much right around the corner as far as distro releases are concerned. So yeah, a lot happening here. And there was a webinar Kronos announced right before releasing the API, and it was recorded. I have watched it a bit, only got like half an hour in, and the first 20 minutes are a history lesson on Vulkan, which is kind of uninteresting if you have followed all the stuff, like not like I did in the past. I don't know if it gets any more nitty-gritty later on. I was thinking if it doesn't do that in half an hour, it might not do it at all. But if you have not followed Vulkan at all, but are interested right now, you should maybe watch that webinar recording.
See ya. I'm out of here. I'm going to watch that now.
Goodbye.
So yeah, anything to add? Any last-minute news pop-ups for Vulkan?
Events are literally happening while we're in the cast. It is that new, that fast-moving.
Also, another addition, if you are interested in working with Vulkan, but you really hate working with a C API, NVIDIA has released a C++ wrapper that is apparently a bit more convenient, that reduced the draw a triangle demo code by a couple of lines. The original one is like 700 lines, I believe. And
it is a little excessive, yeah.
Yeah, but you need to put that in context. When you have done all that boilerplate, you can draw much more than a triangle, but it is that you need at least
Absolutely,
that much to do it.
That's just a framework for it.
It's like some people are like, oh, 700 lines to simply draw a triangle. Yeah, but then a lot of other stuff can get done as well with these reusable 700 lines.
Yeah, anybody that's interested in working with Vulkan, there are tons of projects on GitHub from Lunargy, Kronos Group, and NVIDIA, a bunch of other companies. If you look on the Vulkan website, it has references to all this. You should really look through all that. You can see examples, debuggers, a whole bunch of things.
Yeah.
Breaking news. Dota 2 has had a Vulkan update. I don't know whether it's actually gone live, but the depot's been updated for it.
Nice.
It's been dormant for a bit, so yeah, that's cool. Sorry, Duda.
No, that was quite important news, and but we also forgot to point out Lunargy a bit more, which have released a full SDK for Vulkan, which also works on Linux. It's not like some of these nice SDKs that you can only get on Windows. It's available for Linux, the complete thing, I believe. So yeah, if you want to get working, the bed has been made for you. Go in it, get to work. It's not like some abstract thing where you have to scour the whole internet for tools and documentation. They have really released the whole suite for you to work with. Make something nice if you dare.
Yeah, it may require some knowledge and dedication to actually learn it, but there are plenty of tools to do so.
And I believe Vim also got like Vulkan support in a heartbeat. Because it's freaking Vim. Why not?
Yeah, someone's posted a syntax Vim file for Vulkan, which is cool.
Man, that was fast. This is great. I'll admit I'm still kind of curious to see where things go. It's exciting to see so many other people already involved and ready to start creating things. I actually expected that it was going to be like a very, very slow adoption. Because we've seen things like this come along in the past.
Yeah, but this seems to have way more fire under its butt than the DirectX 12 rollout had.
It absolutely does.
Because that's like, oh, DirectX 12, is anything happening? Oh, there was that thing of the singularity, which we are apparently also getting for Vulkan, but yeah, what now? What now, dude?
Well,
DirectX 12, the biggest news post in the last couple of months has been Dolphin doing, some optimization for it. But yeah, it's been pretty quiet on that front.
as far as Dolphin, if they did all the work to get it to DirectX 12, they might also do the same thing for Vulkan.
Oh, absolutely. And it would be one of those things where if they can go to Vulkan and go to more platforms, then that's obviously a sensible target. What does surprise me is SDL, I would have thought, would have been the first projects to have pushed Vulkan support on the back end, but they seem to be the one project that hasn't had any Vulkan. I haven't seen anything about
I
it.
seem to recall
Ryan Gordon tweeted that he was looking into it.
Right.
We need 4 or 5 of him.
Or maybe 100. That'd be nice.
Might be
I
too much.
can't follow this many verbose people on Twitter, so let's keep it down a bit.
As far as adoption goes, remember that it's not just Valve and Linux gaming that benefits from this. Google's also been pushing really hard for Vulkan adoption, as it'll help on Android.
And let's all remember for a second, pointing out that webinar again, there was like a slide of everybody who was involved in developing Vulkan, which was all the important people in video game graphics, even computer graphics for movies like Pixar and Lucasfilm, and OS vendors like Red Hat and Canonical, and one company was missing, and it's Apple. I want you to remember that. In my opinion, if you were not on that list, except Microsoft because of their size, but all companies which are not holding basically a monopoly on the desktop, not on that list, you're not important in computer graphics.
Is it worth mentioning that Metal Vulkan project?
No, we do not support that.
Okay.
Yeah, apparently there will be some limitations to that, because also in that webinar, it was again pointed out how Metal is not like DirectX 12 and Vulkan.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a halfway measure, and there's stuff it doesn't support. What the heck, Apple? Why are you full of coke? And I don't mean the drink. Have fun listening to this on iTunes.
To be fair, they thought differently and they lost.
Yeah, and it's originally designed just for their interfaces.
And then it's the only API they can use.
And
Yeah.
that's always been Apple's philosophy.
Now, does anyone have any other Vulkan links at all to share?
No one said, "Are you out of your Vulkan mind?" I'm so disappointed in every single one of you.
Are you disappointed in yourself? Because you should have said it.
Or mention melding?
That's all I have.
Thanks, Doc.
No.
Okay then. General gaming news. Frozen Synapse 2 has been announced.
Hooray!
I like that game. A nice little turn-based tactical game. It was a bit sluggish on Linux though, I have to say.
Was it?
Yeah, it felt a bit funky to me. Do you not remember? No?
No.
It worked nicely for me because it had like no graphics requirement.
Right.
And I don't know what you're talking about, but okay, your experience is your
Must
experience.
just be my experience. Yeah. But we held a few events for that, and I'm sure we'll do that in the future.
Yeah.
For the sequel.
So Frozen Synapse 2 is to be open world, and is also expected to be released this year.
And remembering how the Linux support for Frozen Synapse 1 was a bit like, we only did it for the Humble Bundle, and I believe the DLC release for Frozen Synapse Red, that was a bit of a tricky story on Linux, because I tried getting it, but it was only on Windows when I tried to get it.
Which is not a problem anymore.
Yeah, but so this is getting the full release, and it's completely committed and supported for Linux? That's my question here.
Yes, which they've confirmed that on Twitter, as well as sort of expected, as they've supported Linux quite well in their last title, which was Frozen Cortex.
Which I still have to pick up.
It's so similar yet so different. I like it a lot.
So a very strong physics simulation of racing. Nope, that didn't
Is
work.
this the mud game?
This is Gas Guzzlers Extreme, but my words aren't there today.
Is this like if you took Euro Truck Simulator and made it American?
Well, kind of. I guess if you're going from, a view from outside America, sure. This is what we all have, like car-mounted turrets, because you never know. Someone's just going to cut you off, and they're always wrong.
So this is a racing game. It's sort of destruction-y, collisions, explosions.
Yeah.
I guess you could just say Destruction Derby, really, and just with guns.
Yeah, it's just a racing game with guns. That's really all it is. And it's very arcadey, so I understand that, someone should make sure that Hero gets a copy.
Yes, of course.
Because I know that he really likes those. Because this is the physics are incredibly realistic.
With combat as a core mechanic, I might actually like it.
Are you serious?
He might even find this Steam controller is perfect for it.
Yeah. Well, think of Dirt Showdown as having combat.
Well, I'll just think of not playing Dirt Showdown.
Vehicular combat.
But I'm kind of looking forward to that one. Corbin mentioned sometime last year, I believe, that he was already kind of trying to play this under Wine. And I think he was really excited when one day they actually got it working. He and a friend of his. But I have this one too, so I'm kind of looking forward to hopefully, again, just watching the number of games in my SteamOS and Linux library increasing by 1. I think this would be a good one too for a SteamLUG event because the multiplayer is a lot of fun.
Speaking of increasing by 1, N++ has listed their hardware requirement for Linux, and it's a bit threadbare. It says it needs Ubuntu.
Which is basically their confirmation that it's coming to Linux, as they had not said anything about it previously.
Have they not? I'm fairly certain they confirmed it a couple of weeks ago.
The important here is to remember that suffixing ++ first evaluates, then increments. Programmer joke, I hope you get it.
I got it. Street Fighter V is coming to Linux in spring. Apparently it didn't make it for the launch this week, and apparently Valve are helping them with the port.
I am quite happy that this gets a little more time in the oven for Linux because people have been a bit iffed about the Windows version, which is basically a full-price early access game with lots of issues, in multiplayer and in performance. And we know how games that have performance issues on Windows translate to Linux, at least in the old world of OpenGL.
So another interesting thing about Street Fighter V that I did not realize until recently is that it has cross-platform multiplayer between PlayStation Network and Steam.
Along with Rocket League.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool.
And a handful of other games that are on their way out are going to have... It looks like there's a lot of PlayStation 4 and, at least at the moment, Windows PC cross-play compatibility. So hopefully for some of those games that, like Rocket League, for example, let's hope that the Linux version has that same support.
Yeah. So there's a private beta of Sunless Sea playable at the moment. They have been allowing customers to get access to experimental builds. I hope if any of you interested have approached me about that.
This game has all of my yeses. I have sucked the life out of FTL, and this seems to be the game that could be my next FTL.
I think it's a bit dark for me, but yeah, I really like the concept of it.
And another dark game that could be a replacement for something like FTL, Darkest Dungeon. The Linux port is officially being worked on and expected to release in March.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of excitement around this game, as a lot of people really liked the style as well as the brutality.
It's a game where the design philosophy is that losing is fun.
Right, yes.
It's a hard roguelike.
Very, very.
Which is cool.
Let's say roguelite because it's from all other aspects except for permadeath and dungeon crawling. It's not at all like the classic rogue.
I get you, yeah. I watched a quick play on Giant Bomb of it, and it looks like a game I'd really like to play, but again, yeah, really dark and morbid, kind of depressing. So what is this other thing, Arc Battle Eye?
It's an anti-cheat software that is used to protect servers from cheaters, for example in Arma 3. And seems like they are working on it, in this case specifically for Ark Survival Evolved, which is also using BattleEye.
The good thing is they're working on it. The bad thing is Ark Survival Evolved has already added this to their official servers, and all Linux and Mac players can no longer join them until they get it worked out.
That's a bugger.
Yeah.
I hope we do have our own server, don't we?
Yes, we do. Hosted by MoHero.
So play on that one. It's the best one anyway, and it means you can play there.
Exactly. But I'm hoping that this means the Arma 3 official port for Linux will happen someday. While I'm fine with the experimental port, I need to find a way to convince you, Doretta.
Of what?
Buying it. Buy it now.
Armor.
Or when it's official. Buy it whenever.
I'm not buying this until they are really committed and it has that icon in the Steam store.
I know. Which is why I want BattleEye to be implemented.
So do I. It's like that one game that fills an itch I have been having since I no longer play with Orchestra 2. I want to have this, but they don't want to commit to it, at least not fully. They're kinda like always a bit more, but never really committed to it. So, Firewatch has been released, the first-person adventure game, of which I know very little because people, while they are excited about it, do not talk about it at all because there apparently are spoilers in like every breath this game takes. In like the first couple of minutes, there's a dark thing, a dark story, and so nobody talks about it except that they like it. Apparently Cheese knows something about Firewatch, and he's very eager to talk about it.
How's it going, guys? Firewatch is like a sort of first-person adventure game, I guess. Like gameplay-wise, it's probably not that different from Gone Home, but unlike Gone Home, you're not unearthing a story that happened in the past. It's something that happens around you, and your actions affect the tone of the story a little bit, so you're more of a participant in what's going on. But
So it's totally a quest to find your pet turtle and your pet rock.
exactly. It's definitely about. No, it's not at all. But yeah, like the whole idea that you're in this isolated environment and the only communication you have is with your supervisor via radio creates an interesting atmosphere, and the relationship with her that you form is kind of the bulk of the story, really, and everything else that goes on is sort of more of the context, which is this kind of dark mystery thing going on. It's very, very nicely paced. I see a lot of discussion about whether or not it's worth $20. I know for me, I got more than $20 worth out of it. But there are clearly people who rush through, and for an exploration-oriented game, I guess you're paying for a lot of content that you don't see or care about if you're not willing to stop and explore.
Yeah, this is the old dreaded dollar per hour argument that is popping up left and right here, which I do not subscribe to. Some games have their length and they are good this way, almost no matter the cost, like within reason for a game. But this is just a stupid argument to make. It's like, does it feel like it was worth the money for you? Then that's okay. And if other people feel differently, then yeah, it's like the classic, people are never wrong about how they feel. If you don't think you got your money worth, well, consider your buying habits, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally okay to not like the game, but it's stupid to say it has no value just because it's not your thing.
So, way back, a port was announced of an old game, Earth 2160, which has finally released in form of a wine port on Steam. Has anyone tried this?
No.
Not I, said Telly.
Apparently Terminator has tried it. In chat. Please tell us how it works for you. Apparently it works quite well according to Terminator. Also, just to point this out, there's also a very good open source clone of the Earth series. If you are inclined to play this game but don't have the money or don't want to spend it on a wine port, check out the open source version, which name I can't remember now, but it exists. Probably in your repo somewhere.
So is that an open source clone or an open source engine replacement?
It's a clone, pretty much like UFO Alien Invasion is a clone of the XCOM series. So, Dying Light has released its enhanced edition along with the following DLC, and you can get it now. The DLC has received favorable reviews, I believe. The enhanced edition, though, doesn't do much for the average Linux user. There don't seem to be that many specific fixes. They fixed something they only just introduced with the enhanced edition, which was a texture bug, but after that, well, it has not really improved, but it also didn't get worse.
To clarify, the DLC is called The Following.
Yeah, they had some stupid stuff in their marketing where they called it Dying Light, The Following Enhanced Edition, like The Following was a new game and an enhanced edition of that was like incredibly stupid.
Yeah.
Like the marketing people weren't even knowing what they were making the marketing material for.
Yeah, so for anyone that's interested in getting the DLC, it's a huge new playable space as well as new items and things like that, but it's a rural area, so it's much different from the included urban areas in the base game.
And you get a dune buggy to race in, or something like that.
And smash into zombies with.
I really need to get into that after finishing XCOM, because I enjoyed Dying Light, which might have been my favorite game of last year. So, Aspyr published Layers of Fear, a Unity engine game, has been released. A fairly short game, as I can read in the reviews, but people seem to enjoy it. Like 3 hours, might be $1 per hour again, might be a bit short for the asking price, but apparently it's quite moody, well designed, and interesting and new in the first-person horror game department, which has been kind of saturated in the last years.
This is just a Unity export. Aspyr did not port this game, but they are publishing it, so we can still thank them for that.
Yeah, Aspyr seem to be reimagining themselves in what they do in the gaming space. They haven't really released many or any new ports since Kota 2, I believe. And even that was more of a republishing thing. They also did the Windows republish for that, with all the extra bells and whistles and workshop support. So it's interesting to see they are actually doing some completely original content as publishers, not as developers. I am wondering how Aspire will work for the years to come. If we are even seeing something new from them. In the ports department, not in the original content department. If they do original content and release it for Linux, I'm fine, but some ports would also be nice.
Maybe they're still bitter about the whole Indigo Prophecy thing, the Fahrenheit thing, because, they seemed really amped and we weren't.
I was amped. I bought it. Why weren't you?
Have you played it?
Yes. It's great bollocks.
Uh-huh.
It's completely great bollocks.
Okay, so if you've already played like that same game twice elsewhere,
No. I know what you think. Like Beyond Two Souls or whatever, and the Press X to Jason game. This is the most bonkers of them by far.
Oh, by far. But this is what led to that, So either way, I think Aspired maybe just a little bit upset about that. So
Wasn't Kota 2 later than Indigo Prophecy Fahrenheit?
It was.
yeah, but it was probably still under contract at the same time. That's why we haven't seen anything since. Yeah, so they just wrapped that up and they're done now. They hate us. Y'all can quote me.
You heard it here, folks. So, Snow, the open world free to play winter sport game, included a fix for their Fmod issue, which means that the audio now works. Unfortunately, there's now a conflict with the Steam runtime, so if you try running it through the Steam interface, it will not work at all.
That's audio works for some people.
The audio works for me.
For a lot of the games that I've been helping out with support for, I've been seeing lots of Steam runtime conflicts over the past few days. Must be something in the recent beta updates that's causing problems, like Unity games and non-Unity games alike.
If I might add to that, sad to see this happen, but also yay, I'm totally winning on one of my predictions from last year,
You are.
where I predicted the runtime was falling apart this year.
Anyway, I played a bit of Snow, and while it still has some issues on the Linux version, it's pretty cool. And the fact that you can just ski around the entire mountain and try to avoid death, which is mostly what I was doing because I'm not quite so skilled at it.
So it's a roguelike skiing game.
With crafting and zombies.
Is that true? I know nothing about this game.
No.
Okay.
It was just the way it's like avoid death. I kept thinking, gee, they could make like a roguelike then. So it's like a roguelike snowing game.
Snowing?
Well, there's
A skiing
there's a
game.
ragdoll button that kills you.
Is there a Yeti that chases you?
There is
No.
now.
Alright, there needs to be.
But there are trees and rocks, and those are pretty close.
Isn't there a vendor called the Yeti?
I have a Yeti microphone.
Alright, that's close enough.
I just want to be able to press Y to go faster than it when no one else knows to.
I just want a red snowboard because it goes faster.
But I do not want to build a snowman.
Doesn't have to be a snowman.
Could be a snow woman.
Gender-neutral snow person. Moving on to crowdfunding. Deliver Us to the Moon is on Kickstarter, where a rogue astronaut is sent to the moon on a secret mission to save humanity from extinction. They send the rogue astronaut, and it's one guy. I don't know where they mentioned it, but I also find this quite funny. Why would you not send the sensible astronaut instead of the rogue one?
But don't forget the robot. There's also the robot.
Is he also rogue?
That's a good question. Maybe it's a rogue-like robot.
Maybe they did the thing which I like to do, where they scramble up the words in rogue and they say rouge. Maybe he's a rouge robot?
So this includes elements of open lunar exploration and survival, and is also planned to have episodic releases.
It sounds interesting.
The game is built on Unreal Engine 4.
Episodic releases. It's always a good plan. Emphasis on plan.
Yeah, and it's working so well for independent studios, so well.
Yeah, I don't want to name any of them because I really don't, and I understand what it comes from a good place, right? The idea is that if we can do well enough with this, when we can continue this series, we can actually grow something from it. But the downside for any of us who get involved or invested in it is that if it doesn't do well enough, that story just never ends.
I mean, that's not a positive outcome for developers either. I mean, nobody's happy with that when it happens.
Not at all.
Another exciting project on Kickstarter is Overload, which is a 6 degree of freedom shooter made by many of the people that worked on the original Descent games. So this was originally supposed to be only on Windows and single player, but they have since revised it to have a simultaneous release for Linux and Mac, as well as a commitment to a multiplayer expansion after the release, which anyone who backs the Kickstarter will receive for free.
Well, and the nice thing here was that this wasn't just like they didn't just change a few things. It was also that Linux initially was announced as a stretch goal. And I don't know, someone probably threw him Cheese's way or something, and he's like, "That's bad, it's not." And they said, "Okay, we won't do that." It's now It's in there.
Yeah, I actually contacted them straight away on my own. I was excited about it.
I think it's amazing that there's this is like the third or fourth Descent inspired title to come along like in the last year or two now.
I think it's really interesting the way that this one, more than any of the others, has a very distinct and identifiable Descent vibe about it. Like there's something about it that screams Descent a lot more than any of the other projects that I've seen.
Oh, I completely agree with that.
And what that is magic, because as much as I ask people, no one can explain what that means.
Yeah, it's difficult. But it's cool as well. Like it's really cool to see all these kind of different interpretations of what a 6 Degrees of Freedom shooter can be like in this kind of generally underground, constrained, maze-like environment.
Yeah, definitely. And here, there is no way to describe it to you. It's kind of like earlier when I was talking about Doom, or I mentioned when I was playing Doom, there's this feel to the movement that you can't quite... Other shooters don't have, and it's because it wasn't realistic. It wasn't intended to be. Modern shooters got more and more towards that realism, especially in the movement. And so you can't really describe how it was like the same thing with Descent. There was something in the movement and the freedom of movement that you had, but you had limitations. And so it was just... Everything else prior to that had just kind of been stuck on one plane, and so this was really exciting, and it's hard to kind of explain why that was exciting and how it differs.
Well, I understand when you say the difference between Doom and other shooters, because that's very clear. Like you said, the movement was not realistic. It was floaty, they didn't have jumping or anything like that. But...
You got to remember that with a 6 Degrees of Freedom shooter, there are a lot of different aspects of movement that play off each other, like unlike a first-person shooter where you can generally move in,
it's still a first-person
2D
shooter.
plane that you kind of move around. But now the relationship between sliding and looking around is something to take into consideration. The difference, between acceleration and changing your pitch, and like all of these little intricacies in the way that the different movement bits can interact and stuff. Creates a very different feel.
Okay.
So magic.
But also in the trailer as well, like the map design and the robot design, there's something about them that has that kind of I don't know. I'm not sure what it is. I want to say it's that they have like these kind of simple geometric shapes that kind of reflect a little bit of what the original Descent had, but it's not really the case because they are fairly detailed models.
So to derail this slightly for a moment, my personal 6 Degrees of Freedom game in my childhood was Forsaken, if people remember that.
I never got to play that.
And apparently the source code has been GPL'd a couple of years ago, and there is like a GitHub, and I'm currently downloading it. So yay!
That's interesting. Let's look into that.
Yeah, with the pre-compiled version there. Let's see. Yeah, because this is also a very good and popular 6 Degrees of Freedom game, and if it's free software, why not?
I know that there was a lot of, or a little bit of rivalry between Descent players and Forsaken players. I never got into that, but I can see from the chat here that Namoda did.
Well, I got the game as a gift for N64. I never wanted it. I didn't even like it way back then, but it grew on me over the time, even though I always completely sucked.
But yeah, really cool to see Overload, the Overload developers considering things like Linux support and multiplayer that are going to mean more work for them, but are going to mean a better project for people who care about those things.
So with that, let's wrap it up.
Indeed. If you have feedback for us, we have an email address, cast@steamlug.org. We are also on IRC, #SteamLUG on irc.freenode.net, Twitter @SteamLUG, Google+, wherever you use this, plus SteamLUG, and our YouTube channel where we have recently been pushing up our archives, so please subscribe and maybe share the love, because that's how the YouTube search algorithm works. Our channel is called SteamLUG. So, thanks everybody for listening in, and see ya and hear ya around. Bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
I have about 5 gigs, and if we're going to talk about Vulkan, it's going to eat that in a heartbeat.
It's okay. It's going to be a really low-level talk. We'll get it over quite quickly.
Get it? Low-level talk.
All right.
I like these jokes. These are good jokes. Tomorrow, February 12th, we will have a Space
The
Hawk
12th?
event.
20th?
Oh, whoa, 20th.
You've been
indeed.
experimenting with Vulkan.
You know,
Time
it's-
travel is possible now, isn't it?
A certain naysayer was wrong. I
We need more context here.
hope not.
Okay then, general gaming news.
Hooray!
Yay.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.